I'm John Zielinski, writer, photographer, and publisher. I have been in the state of Iowa for more than 20 years. I'm the author of Portrait of Iowa, The Amish a Pioneer Heritage, Meskwaki and Proud of It, Children of Iowa, Unknown Iowa, and many other books on Iowa and the Amish. I'm under a total blacklist in the state of Iowa as I attempt to prove that major politicians, members of the university faculty and staff, legislators, and police are involved in a major cover-up of child slavery, drug trafficking, and murder. I joined with members of the Nebraska legislature, including State Senator John DeCamp, to try to reveal what happened to Johnny Gosch and other missing children in this country. July 17, 1991, I was on WHO Talk Radio with Mrs. Gosch, Noreen Gosch, along with Ted Gunderson, the former head of the Los Angeles Bureau of the FBI. Our main point was that an organization called NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, was kidnapping children throughout the United States and training them to be sex slaves and selling them at auction. John Gosch described in 1983 attending a Senate hearing on child pornography that showed a catalog that Mr. Gosch described as a Sears Roebuck type catalog, big, thick catalog, offering children for sale. From 1983, our U.S. Congress, Senator Harkin, Senator Grassley, James Leach, all knew that in the United States was an organization so big and so powerful that they could put together a catalog and offer children for sale. Johnny Gosch was apparently kidnapped by being selected from that catalog. He had been photographed 2 weeks before his kidnapping. I have said NAMBLA exists, North American Man-Boy Love Association. Now here is the Reader's Digest in a first story after 10 years of silence. The last story published on the North American Man-Boy Love Association was in Time magazine in 1983, and it suggested that NAMBLA picked children up at bus depots and forced them into prostitution and into pornographic films and so on. Now, this story by Reader's Digest skirts the complete truth of NAMBLA by setting the situation in Asia only and talking about child slaves in Asia. Yet, State Senator John DeCamp of Nebraska, who participated in the investigation of the Nebraska legislature, has clearly stated that North American Man-Boy Love Association had everything to do with the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch and thousands, tens of thousands, and perhaps hundreds of thousands of children in America. Many, many more children are disappearing every year than you would get from the news media coverage. It is apparent few and far between who, like John and Noreen Gosch, can stand up and shout when their child is missing. This is when I discovered many, many more horrible stories, the most horrible of which is the one that we're now about to give you in the rest of the story of what happened to Johnny Gosch.
Leads, then something breaks. Someone seems to know what happened, but the police won't even talk to that person. Sounds unbelievable, but it's not. Scott Rappaport with our investigation.
10 years ago, just outside of Des Moines, Iowa, a little apple-cheeked kid named Johnny Gosch got up early on a Sunday to deliver his morning newspapers. Seems like all the kids in the neighborhood did it. See, here in the heartland of America, there's nothing more all-American than a boy and his paper route. That's what Johnny Gosch and his parents thought. Until that day 10 years ago, when Johnny Gosch disappeared from his paper route and never came home.
Mr. Johnny, hope you're okay. Dad and Mom love you a lot.
And they're animals. They're disgusting human beings that prey on children for money. They're filth.
It's been a decade since Johnny's parents have seen or heard from their son. 10 years since the little red wagon he used to carry his newspapers was found unattended. Johnny missing, no clues to his whereabouts. A presumed abduction.
Do you have any suspects?
No.
Are you close to breaking the case?
No.
Are you close to making an arrest?
No.
Incredibly, just 2 years after the Gosch kidnapping, on the other side of Des Moines, another young paperboy is reported missing. Eugene Martin, 13 years old, vanishing from his paper route on a Sunday morning. Another apparent kidnapping. The similarities between the two cases are astonishing. Eugene, too, has never been found.
I want to tell him that I'm still looking for him. I still love him very much, and I want him to come home.
Are you any closer to solving the case than you were 8 years ago?
No.
Eugene Martin and Johnny Gosch, for years, their heartbreaking cases were at a dead end. While in a Lincoln, Nebraska prison, one man claims to hold the key to the puzzle.
Do you know what happened to Johnny Gosch?
Yes,
How do you know?
because I was there when they took him.
This is Paul Bonacci, and the story he is about to tell is graphically violent, sexually deviant, and incredibly detailed. A story he says can help solve the kidnap mysteries. Bonacci claims he played an active role in the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch, and says he has information regarding Eugene Martin. Bonacci, himself serving time for child molestation, says Johnny Gosch was the victim of an organized sex ring that preyed upon young boys, that he himself was a part of that ring, and that Johnny Gosch was hand-picked to be abducted.
They said that that's the boy that they wanted. They said that they already had a buyer for him. They already had somebody lined up to get him. So that's the one that they were after.
According to Bonacci, he and 2 others stalked Johnny by car along his paper route. Bonacci's job was to drug Johnny Gosch.
When they grabbed him off the street, I was in the car. I was in the back seat. I was the one that put the chloroform over his face to knock him out.
Later, Bonacci says they took Johnny to a safe house in Sioux City, Iowa, where on the orders of the group's leader, he proceeded to rape Johnny Gosch.
Sorry. I don't know what to say.
All I could imagine was the pain and the heartbreak that my son was going through, and probably did go through for many years. That broke his spirit. That would break his spirit.
Noreen Gosch has heard Bonacci's story before. She and her husband John have talked to him in prison, where Paul Bonacci has graphically spelled out the entire sordid tale. It is from these conversations that she believes Bonacci has knowledge of her son's physical condition and perhaps his whereabouts.
Do you realize you're hanging all your hopes and prayers on a child molester who's done unspeakable things to your son?
There's just been so many things that Paul has shared with us that would have been impossible for him to know had he not been with Johnny.
Among that information, letters to Bonacci from around the country that he says are from members of the alleged sex ring that kidnapped Johnny Gosch, complete with descriptions of Johnny's physical condition and his whereabouts. One letter, postmarked June of 1990, misspellings and all, indicates Johnny was in Mexico with his captor and says, quote, JG is back to blonde and had face surgery. He still looks much the same. JG, they believe, stands for Johnny Gosch. Another letter states cryptically, JG was not the only boy we got from DM, Des Moines. Bonacci believes this refers to the kidnapping of Eugene Martin, the paper boy reported missing 2 years after Johnny Gosch.
You think you can help find Johnny?
Yes.
You think he's alive?
Yes.
So what did the local police think about Bonacci's story when they went to interview him? Well, incredibly, though completely baffled by the kidnapping cases for the last 10 years, local police have never interviewed or questioned Paul Bonacci.
Why haven't you interviewed Paul Bonacci?
I don't feel that we're prepared to interview Paul Bonacci at this point. And that's as much as I'll say about it.
This is a guy who says he took part in the kidnapping, knows a lot about it. You've got a case that's been unsolved for 10 years. I would think you'd be kicking the doors down to want to talk to him at this point.
When the time is right, again, I will reiterate, we may well interview Paul Bonacci, but it will be when we're ready to do it.
How much more time has to go by?
I have no idea.
I think that's insane.
It is a major cover-up.
We can't get law enforcement help. This is when we need it. We can't take somebody to court without them, and they know it.
It seems outrageous that you haven't spoken to him.
That's your opinion.
The case was bungled.
Professionally speaking, from what I know of Mr. Bonacci, to sum it up, he is not a credible witness.
What is he?
A pathological liar.
I think there's a lot of law enforcement people that are pathological liars also.
There are those in law enforcement who believe Paul Bonacci is a liar who has made up this entire story to gain an early release from prison, which he never got. Benassi has previously been charged with 3 counts of perjury by a grand jury, but those charges were dropped. Still, his incredible story, coupled with his impassioned expressions, beg the question, is this remarkable truth or remarkable theater?
There are people who say you're a liar, a child molester. Why should we believe anything you have to say?
And I challenge, if anybody thinks I'm lying, I'll take lie detector tests to prove I'm telling the truth. I'll take any test they want me to take.
But regardless of who's telling the truth, cops or convict, the answer will do little to erase the pain of fathers like Don Martin, whose handsome little boy would be 22 years old today if he's still alive.
In my bedroom, I have a picture of him up on the wall. I don't normally tell anybody, but I always look at that picture every night before I go to sleep. And I wonder where he's at.
And for the heartbroken parents of Johnny Gosch, who today would be a grown-up 22-year-old, the hurt never goes away.
Missing the opportunity to see him play football, drive a car, these type of things. I miss my buddy.
Johnny, I love you, and I miss you. I really miss you. And the people who did this to you, we're trying to get them. We're doing the best we can.
Well, the police tell us they are aware of Benassi's claims. He is set to be released from prison in October. He could still face kidnapping charges. And if you have any information about these or other missing children, please call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-843-5678.
Everyone. Milk cartons with pictures of missing children have become commonplace, but the very first boy ever to be placed on a milk carton 10 years ago is still missing. His name is Johnny Gosch. He was last seen on his Sunday morning paper route in September of 1982. For his parents, it has been 10 years filled with anguish, frustration, and tears. For police and the FBI, it has meant hundreds of interviews and thousands of man-hours. The result? No leads, no arrests, not even any suspects. Now a convicted sex abuser has come forward to say he was there the day Johnny was kidnapped, and that he has in fact seen him since. Johnny's mother believes him, but the police won't even talk to him. In a moment, we will. But first, let's meet Johnny's mother, Noreen Gosch, and the investigator who is helping her, Roy Stevens. Please welcome them. Noreen, the case has received so much publicity. How have these last 10 years been for you and your family?
They have been so stressful. It's very difficult to even describe to someone who's not been through it. You have, first of all, the tearing pain of being separated from your child, wondering if they're dead or alive or who's doing what to them. You have the work that you encounter trying to locate them, trying to find them, some shred of information that might help. It's just a level of frustration and pain that I never thought I would live through or experience in my entire life.
There must be days when you almost wish that his body had turned up so that the ordeal would be over.
In the kindest way, if Johnny could not be found and have a decent life, I would rather him be at peace, yes. And that's very difficult for me to say publicly, but it's true.
With the guilt associated with that feeling, even.
And even the guilt associated with perhaps having food to eat, a bed to sleep in when he might not even have those basic human comforts. It's a survivor guilt that you go through as well.
When was the last time you saw him?
The last time I saw Johnny was the night of the Last Supper, I call it. Both of my other children were home, which was unusual, to have everybody there at one time. My daughter's fiancé was there, and we had a very nice dinner. Kids were joking around. They were having a great time. And Johnny said, I have to get ready to go to bed because I want to do my paper out in the morning early so we can go to the lake. And he was going to get to take his best friend. So he said goodnight to everyone, gave me a kiss, and went upstairs. Pretty soon he came back downstairs. He came around in the kitchen, put his arms around me, and he gave me an extra kiss on the cheek, and he says, Mom, I really love you. You're the best. And he turned the corner and went up the stairs, and I never saw him again. Last time.
How did you then find out he was missing?
The next morning, the phone rang a little before 7. Some of the neighbors didn't get their papers. So we just assumed that Johnny was running late and had just gotten up late. So my husband went out to try and help him on the route, and that's when he found Johnny's wagon sitting at the street corner with the papers still loaded. He had not even cut one bundle, and he was gone. And we knew something terrible had happened. Our son was a very responsible boy. He did not, he was there for his route. He had a perfect service award for every month he had it. He wasn't the type to skip out.
You knew it, but it took 72 hours for the police to begin an investigation.
It took 72 hours to start what they call an investigation. By the time the police arrived, 45 minutes after I placed the call to enter him as a missing person, I had already talked to all the witnesses. I had the description of the car. I had the description of the man Johnny was last seen talking to, and a description of a partial license plate. I did all that before they got there.
You have, over the last 10 years, had how many leads, would you say?
Hundreds. And
That you have followed up on yourself?
Oh, yes. We don't take the luxury of just saying this lead might be something or this lead might not. We check it out, even though many of them are dead ends. We've also had approximately 700 psychics call us, meaning well, but it didn't help.
Why are you convinced that this man who is now behind bars is a person with real information?
Paul Benassi has been able to supply us with information that only he could have known if he had been with my son at some point in time. For instance, there was a scar above Johnny's ankle, a scar that we never reported to the media, never reported to the police. Paul was able to correctly describe that scar, the color of it, the shape of it, and the location. Paul also was able to fill me in on details of things that Johnny had said to him. Again, for instance, I teach yoga, and I have taught for about 17 years. He told me that Johnny told him that he used to go to yoga class with me on nights when I didn't have a babysitter because I wouldn't leave him home alone. And he would take his schoolwork and finish it in the back of the room, and then the two of us would go out to his favorite Mexican restaurant to eat afterwards, and that was some of his special times he remembered with me.
And this man knew that?
This man knew that. He told me that at the prison.
You saw him at the prison?
Yes.
And we actually have videotape of you meeting this man for the first time.
I don't blame you.
I wish I didn't. I feel sober. I feel so bad about it because what they made me do.
That is Paul Benassi. He is currently an inmate at the Nebraska State Penitentiary in Lincoln. He is serving time for 3 separate convictions of sexually abusing a minor, and he is with us now on the phone. Paul, obviously it was a very emotional meeting with Johnny's mother. Why was it so emotional for you?
Because I felt that I'd heard of a lot that I'd done.
Paul, how did you come to know Johnny?
I came to know Johnny when Emilio had abducted him, and he forced me to go along with him.
So you were there when Johnny was abducted?
Yes.
And Noreen, I assume that Paul has described that event in enough detail to you that you're comfortable that he knew the circumstances of the disappearance, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Were you involved in any of the sexual abuse of Johnny?
I was forced to participate in some of it.
You were?
Yes.
We have a videotape, which, Paul, I know you cannot see, but you are familiar with, of a restaurant in Denver. On the wall, you can see the words, Johnny Gosch was here. Were you there when those words were painted onto the wall?
Yes.
Was Johnny there as well?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
That was in about March of '86.
When was the last time you saw Johnny Gosch?
In March of '86.
In March of '86. Do you know now if he's still alive?
I believe so, but I don't know for sure.
Do you have any idea where Johnny may be?
I have some ideas, but I'm not, have no facts.
Johnny is an adult now. Do you have any information on whether he is being held against his will or whether he is staying away?
I don't know.
What's your best guess?
My best guess is they worked on him the same way they worked on a lot of the other kids that were involved with them. They make them feel a lot of guilt. By the time they become adults, they're so much a part of it that they're afraid to ever go back home or afraid to tell anybody because these people tell them that for what they've done, they'll either kill them or they'll end up going to prison or something.
Paul, stay with us on the phone, if you will. We're going to take a commercial break here, and we'll come back and continue in a moment. We're back. We're talking about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch 10 years ago. We are talking with a convicted child molester from behind prison who says he was there on the day that Johnny was abducted. Paul, why should we believe this information that you have?
I don't really know why you should believe me, but I'm telling the truth, and I just feel like I have to tell this. I would have come forward if I were known it sooner myself, but because of multiple personality disorder I have, I did not even know myself as Paul about this. And I know that what was done was wrong, and
Roy Stevens is here with us, Paul. You've investigated and solved 60 missing child cases. Why do you believe Paul's information?
Because he's telling the truth, simply put. I've been working with Paul for 2 years and following up his information, following up the leads that he has provided, the personal knowledge that he has given. Not once in 2 years have I been able to prove him to be other than truthful. I've located other people. I've located other people involved in this case that Paul has provided information on. He knows too many things, personal things about Johnny, that even I did not know when I went into this case for the Gosches. He knew things that took place that morning. He knew about the photograph that had been taken of Johnny 2 weeks before he was abducted. Nobody knew the photograph had ever been taken. Not only did he tell us about the photograph, he described it, and the background that was in the photograph matched perfectly the information that we have on the photograph.
Pretty remarkable, too, that he knew about the writing on the wall in the restaurant.
Yes. And what's amazing about that little feature there is that information about the restaurant and the wall with the writing on it didn't even come from Paul. It came from some, I believe, former neighbors of John and Noreen Gosch that were out there on vacation, saw it, remembered, and called the Gosch family. They, in turn, called me. On my next trip out, I saw the restaurant. I took those photographs of the wall. When I came back, I visited with Paul. I did not show him the writing on the wall, did not even tell him what was there. I simply showed him a photograph of the exterior of the restaurant. Once he saw the exterior, he told me what kind of restaurant it is, the unique features of the restaurant, which is very unique, and then proceeded to tell me about the fact they had been painting their fingernails that day. They were being made fun of, so they went to the restroom, and the end result was the writing on the wall. The interesting fact of the whole thing is the writing on the wall is in fact put on with dark red fingernail polish, a maroon type red. In Paul's description of what took place, they were using fingernail polish, dark red maroon type. Paul did not know I'd ever seen that restaurant or seen the wall.
Paul, we've heard some pretty amazing information that you have that would lead everyone here to believe that you do in fact know information about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. In your mind, what can you tell us that would prove to us that you know what happened? What's the most convincing piece of evidence?
I don't really know because nobody's ever told me if anything I've ever said has been true. Nobody's ever told me that anything I've ever told them about, like the writing on the wall or the scar that Johnny had and stuff, nobody's ever told me if any of that stuff was ever true. So nobody's ever confirmed to me anything that I've ever said.
Roy just said it here, and so did Mrs. Gosch.
I have never confirmed anything he's ever said to me. I have tape recorded every session with him, which is over 300 hours. I've never once told him if he's right or wrong. He's hearing it for the first time today.
How does it make you feel, Paul, to know that you were right and that they believe you?
Makes me know that telling the truth, telling the truth can be checked out, but if I was lying, there's no way that they would ever be able to have gotten anything that they've gotten.
All right, let me get to a commercial break and we'll come back and continue our talk about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. And we're back now. Roy, let me ask you, you've been talking to Paul Bonacci from behind bars for 2 years with such a convincing body of evidence. Why have authorities not ever interviewed this man?
2 reasons. 1, he's a convict in prison. And 2 is that 3 years ago he was charged with 3 counts of perjury to a grand jury. Those charges, by the way, were dropped. He was never convicted on those charges. Charges never were ever substantiated. That's it in a nutshell.
Does Paul have anything to gain by lying?
In fact, no. It has cost him. Because of his insistence on his story being true, his parole last year was denied.
Paul is now scheduled to go free next week.
Yes. He has served more time for his charges than anyone else in the state of Nebraska on similar charges.
Paul, are you aware that with this information you have provided that you could, if they all believe you, be arrested?
Yes.
Does that trouble you?
Yes.
But you're still willing to come forward?
I'm still willing to come forward because it's the right thing.
You have a question here?
Yes. Roy, I was wondering, were you hired by the Gosches or are you a paid police officer in Iowa?
I am not a police officer. I have an organization called the Missing Youth Foundation. I have worked for the Gosches for a number of years as well as other families. Hired, yes. Fee, no. There is no money involved. I do not charge for my services to families.
You have a question?
Yes. Why is it that the police does not believe Paul? Is it because the police have something that they did not follow through on?
Noreen, you have strong feelings on that, I bet.
The police have many things that they did not follow through on in our case. This is just one of them. And Roy more or less went over the reasons. Paul is a convict. He's in prison, so therefore they're just staying away from him at this point. This may all change next week when he goes free. We'll have to wait and see.
Your family over the years, as you have tried to follow up on leads, has received death threats?
Correct.
They have threatened your other children that they will take them as well?
Kill them.
Kill them. So every time you have gotten close to information, somebody has come forward to try to stop you.
Every time we get close to solving the case in terms of who done it, not finding Johnny, but the person that's guilty, that may go to prison for this, we receive death threats. We have lots of problems that occur, yes.
you have a question?
I was wondering about from Paul, who is this they that he was referring to? They will brainwash him. They have done, threaten him.
A small group of people, approximately 6 individuals, 6 adults, who abduct children, who are into child pornography and child prostitution and child slavery.
You have a question here?
Yeah, I was wondering, why did he come forward with the truth now?
Paul, why did you come forward with the truth now?
I came forward with it about 2 years ago, and because of the MPD, I didn't know about this information until I had to find the personality that knew about what had happened, because I, as Paul, wasn't the one who was involved, but another personality.
Paul wasn't diagnosed until 2.5 years ago as a multiple personality disorder. He has over 100 personalities, and Paul was never co-conscious.
Paul, I am holding in my hand here 2 letters that you received in prison from 2 friends of yours. One letter reads, I know the restaurant in Colorado, we painted our nails, and I wrote on the wall with JG. I have another letter that says, the colonel has gone back to Mexico and has taken JG with him. JG is back to blonde and had face surgery. So even though you may not know where Johnny currently is, do you think there are people out there who do?
Yes, I do.
We'll be back and continue in a moment. We are talking to a man who is behind bars who says he has new information about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. Paul, you have an audience here. Johnny's mother is with us. What would you like to say to Johnny's mother?
Sorry. If there's anything in the world I could do to change what happened, I would.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to him?
Mm-hmm. Paul, I just want to say that I believe you, and I do want to thank you for your help. And I want to visit with you and spend some time talking with you when you're released. Is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you know where Johnny Gosch is? Please help his mother find him.
Franklin Credit Union figure Paul Bonacci. Bonacci is claiming he has information about Johnny Gosch, and he wants to share it with investigators. The 25-year-old was released from a Nebraska jail today after serving 2 years for sexually abusing 3 children. A year ago, the former so-called victim witness in the Franklin case told the parole board he had information about Johnny Gosch. Now that he's free, Bonacci says he will help a private detective try to find the boy who disappeared 10 years ago. The news is giving Johnny's mother renewed hope.
Paul possesses a tremendous amount of information, and now having him out of prison is going to make it easier for us because he can travel with Roy or do whatever's necessary. I know they'll be bringing him to Des Moines to the crime scene as well.
News Watch 7's Frank Brown has covered stories involving Paul Bonacci in the past and joins us now from the newsroom. And Frank, I understand the Omaha police really don't put a lot of credence behind anything Bonacci has to say.
That's right, Michael. Here in Douglas County, authorities tell me they have no credibility, or Paul Bonacci has no credibility with them. A year ago, Bonacci allegedly told Omaha police he knew about a place where there were ritualistic murders involving children. But when authorities got him out of jail, hoping he could show them where those places were, Bonacci could not. And Bonacci also claimed to be a victim witness in the Franklin investigation. Instead, he was charged with lying, and that charge was eventually dropped, Michael.
Frank, I know in the past the Des Moines police were not too anxious to talk to Mr. Bonacci. Is that going to change at all?
Authorities in Omaha once again tell me if Des Moines police were interested in what Bonacci had to tell them, they would have talked to Bonacci while he was still in jail in Lincoln, Michael, and they did not.
As a longtime Iowa publisher and author of over 18 books, I was much surprised in the court system recently ruled that the Sutherland Printing Company, my 7th printer, was actually the publisher of all my works. Despite the fact that all proof was mine, the ISBN number, the Library of Congress card catalog number, and the physical imprint, Sutherland Printing Company, Dave Sutherland, father and son, close personal friend of Frosty Mitchell and Robert Ray, our former governor, and an associate of Terry Branstad, seemed to have the ability to control the court system. I began to question what was going on. I was told by a businessman in Montezuma, Iowa, 3/4 of this town know those people who are in the drug business. The last man that tried to get them was a deputy sheriff, and he ended up sleeping with a .357 Magnum on his belly. When they threatened to kill his family, he pulled out. I went from there to broaden the investigation and found local law enforcement willing to tell me that Sutherland was indeed involved in drug trafficking and seemed unstoppable. Bill Langdon of the FBI told me, in fact, that Sutherland had known drug connections, and then told me that it was impossible to help with my piracy problem. I went on to discover that Sutherland and others, in addition to being involved in drug trafficking, were also involved in child slavery. This is what led me to the Johnny Gosch case, and in July 17, 1991, I went on the Jan Michelson show with Ted Gunderson, former head of the Los Angeles Bureau of the FBI, Dr. Judy Ann Denson-Gerber, one of the foremost psychiatrists in the country, and public enemy #1 by her own reckoning of the North American Man-Boy Love Association. I found these people talking about NAMBLA as an organization in Iowa and in the United States that was kidnapping children, that was selling children at slave auctions. The investigation of the Nebraska legislature is what led to the material which is now forthcoming.